G'day and welcome back to my channel. Now, if you've been watching some of my videos over the last few months, you may have seen me doing a schlepper. Yes, the Land Wasser Schlepper. And it's nearly done. Video out soon on that one. Yes, it's nearly finished. And I've had a ball making this very weird tracked boat type vehicle, and that one particularly was for belting around the rivers and tugging things around. Yes. Okay. Now, I've also looked at some other schleppers that were available because they're different versions that the Germans made. This particular schlepper I know was German. And some pics. There's a Schlepper 2, which I managed to also get hold of. I'll tell you more about that another day. And then there's other countries that have schleppers. And lo and behold, did I find in my hobby store, this bloody big, enormous Japanese schlepper. Now, it's as you see, it's very big. I'll put it back there. There we go. It's a very big box. And that's all that can be said, really. More about that in a sec. I have to put this thing down. It's a lot. Now, these little, well, big actually, the bloody thing's enormous. It's bigger than my other schlepper. My other schlepper in 1/35th, the little German Land Wasser Schlepper, it's 25 centimetres long. Whatever that is in your imperial measurement, I don't know. I don't do imperial, unless it's Imperial Japanese Navy. So this one's 30. So yeah, it's considerably longer and it's more barge-like, but it does have its tracks. Now, its use was a little bit different. This one was meant for the sea, and the plan had been to put them on top of submarines because they were basically hermetically sealed, watertight, tight as a fish's bum. Yeah, and on the submarine, sneaking out under the water until they got close to atolls, which were too shallow for the submarines to get into. They'd let these little, well, I didn't say its name, did I? Didn't say it's a Ka-Tsu. Ka-Tsu, cat soup. Yeah, Bess got excited about that. I said cat soup, and she completely misunderstood what I was on about and expected something in a bowl that was fish and watery. For those of you who don't know anything about Bass the cat, watch my bloody videos. Anyhow, this Ka-Tsu, right, would disengage from the submarine, sneak in, go to the surface, sneak in with its Japanese sailors piloting, and it would have two great big torpedoes on it. I kid you not. They're just about as big as it was. I mean, here's sort of pick of what's going on. And in they'd go to the atoll, this was the theory, sneak in, drop torpedoes, and basically sink a battleship. Because this was the thing, the Allied forces were basically mooring their ships in places that were difficult for the submarines to get into. But this Ka-Tsu, its job was to sneak in and basically solve that problem by getting the torpedoes into the shallow water and then sinking. Smart, hey? It's just a shame they never got to use it. Well, maybe it's not a shame, depends which side you're barracking for, doesn't it? Shame for them. Yes, they never got to use it because the war ended. Yes, atomic bomb took a big sort of shine to that. But anyhow, that's just how it went. I'm only interested in it I like this kit because it's fascinating. I like machines. And if you've ever watched my videos, it's really about the machines. I'm not that big a sort of joyful person about war. That's not it. Wasn't necessary. That happened. I understand all that. Okay. People make their sacrifices. Understand all that. But I like the machines. This is what I model. I model the machines. So it's very rare that I do a diorama with figures. Anyhow, getting off the subject. You want to know about the Ka-Tsu. Okay. Well, so this kit was made by Dragon. Now, it's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. It would have been 13 shekels. Shekel conversion chart here. 13 shekels for me to buy it normally if I bought it online from the hobby store down in Melbourne, B&A, I normally buy it for with postage. And I sort of dismissed it and thought, oh, it's interesting and I'd really like to do it with the torpedoes, but at that price you've got to be joking. Anyhow, went into Hobby One in Brisbane and they had it for just over 7 shekels. Ooh, nearly half price. That was a bargain. That was worth it at that price. Now, I do want to put the torpedoes on. That's something Dragon's going to do with a future release. They're doing a further model, which was due out earlier this year, but they haven't done it yet, which will have the torpedoes and some machine guns. That's about the only difference. And that makes the model a lot more interesting visually. Otherwise, I mean, the box art for this one's pretty damn boring, but more about that later. Anyhow, what we'll probably do now is let's get in the box and I'll show you the good, the bad, and the spaciousness. Here's that great big box on my modelling bench. It's larger than my A2 mat. It's ridiculous. So we're on wobbly cam, so just bear with me. I just want to show you what happens. We'll lift the lid off, right? Oh. Now, I used a standard Dragon box there. That's just a standard Panzer IV Dragon box, which is, you know, the one that you always get. It's not the super thin one, it's the good size one. And the whole kit fits inside there. No worries at all. There's even a little bit of space. In fact, you could probably pack the torpedoes in, no problem at all. Now, I did the math. That's 2/3 the height, right? But it's 3/4 the width, 3/4 the length. And when you multiply that out, that means the actual parts fit in a box that is 38% the size. Right? Less than half. That means there's over 60% air in that giant box from Dragon. I mean, really, Dragon. Really, really, really. You know, pitiful. Anyhow, let's have a look what's on the bottom of this great big box. While we've got it here. You get the, this is upside down, isn't it? Everything's upside down, Miss Pat. Australian viewers, honest, haven't it? So you get the usual sort of Dragon blurb, and like, look at that, I've got all this. And unfortunately, yes, DS Track's not happy with that. You get a little bit of token PE, that's terrific, that's nice. They go on about hatches and things that are all kind of wonderful. They are, and we'll get into that shortly. Let's have a look at the instructions, and we'll go through the kit parts, and I'll show you. It's actually quite a good kit. Despite my bagging so far, it's actually quite a nice kit. Let's have a look at the instructions first. Typical of Dragon, you don't really get a history or anything. You just get basically the cover art in black and white. You get the sprue map. And with this kit being a new mould, there's not a lot that you're not using. Interestingly, parts here, suspension, which multiple sprues, 4 of those, 2 of those. Yeah, for some reason they're just disregarding a few of those parts. We'll find out why later on. You do get figures. Now I'll do those first because they throw in this figure sprue and I only want 1 figure. But I can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to use some of those other figures. They're it's Dragon, yeah, they're Dragon figures, but look, the detail's not too bad. Really. I know my friend Jens would probably say, oh, you know, it could be better, or my friend Duck. But look, they're okay, they're clean. You even get some rifles, yeah. So those, I believe they're Japanese figures, so we should be able to use those in the Ka-Tsu somewhere. It'd be nice to have a driver at least, because the way it's exposed, and there's really no inside to speak of, they'll be sitting on it. So we'll try and use those as we can. You've got basically your do's and don'ts and your colour call-outs, and it's usually in Humbrol. Sorry, it's not in Humbrol. It's usually like bloody guns or something, isn't it? Yes. GSI Aqueous Hobby Colour, which we would call guns, and Mr. Colour and Model Master. So yes, no Humbrol. What am I thinking? I'm thinking bloody Airfix kits, aren't I? So they're easily converted, and those colours actually are really relatively easy available. We get them here. There's some do's and don'ts about your DS tracks. Basically, put them in the bin. No, you're going to kind of have to use them here unless you want to shell out another, you know, $100 Australian, 10 shekels for aftermarket track links, unless there's another option out there I haven't found yet. So with those sprues, we'll have a quick look at those first and give you an idea of the detail in this kit, because they're quite nice indeed. A sprue, you get 4 of these, and the detail is quite good on the road wheels. Very nice. The sprockets are fairly well detailed. The bogies, well, there's not much to them. What we'll find as we do the instructions is actually photo etch for the bogies. Yes, that's a good and a bad thing. And there's a series of smaller wheels as well. These parts here are not required. So we'll see what that is and whether we can actually use them in some of our scratch building. The rest of this is, so that's all good. Now, you also get an A2. which is, you know, A2. Now A2, you're going to use most of that except for these things here. So basically, and a couple of the little widgets down here. Yeah, a couple of those. So again, there's a few little bits and pieces here which might come in handy for scratching. But the A sprue gives you a few more. I'd say the A sprue is, yeah, it's from, well, that says type 2. Let's have a look. Often it's good to read what's on them. No, this says IGN type 2. Who knows? It could be from the one of the Japanese tanks. Dragon have a habit of this. You'll get a sprue which is from another kit because basically that's similar parts. And then you'll get like a tiny sprue like this, which helps sort of add on the missing bits. So you get two of those. You're going to use most of it except for that and that. And again, they're quite nicely moulded. Next is the D sprue. Now I know I'm going through these fairly quickly. Don't worry, we'll go into detail later as we go through the instructions. And again, typical Dragon quality. There is no flash. It's clean. If you've never seen a Dragon kit, they are beautifully moulded, especially the later version, especially a smart kit like this. You get a 3945 series and smart kit, they are beautifully moulded, and everything is, well, that little fella has snapped. That's probably because he's loose in the box and banging around, but that's no problem. It hasn't actually broken. I might actually remove that part cleanly for storage until I build this. But all very nice, all very clean. Could be slide moulded. It's got that kind of feel about it. It certainly is absolutely crisp, and the edges on this part, say, are just brilliant. It's beautifully moulded. But that's Dragon. I mean, I love Dragon kits because the quality is there. So the later kits, some of the early ones, not so much. But the later Dragon kits, especially 3945 series smart kits, beautiful. Love them. Moving along, we've got the E sprue. And this is going to have all your hatches and hatch surrounds by the looks of things. Various shackles and various pieces for observation flaps and that sort of thing. And you've got this curious arrangement here, which is which might be some sort of ventilation system, not quite sure. And again, everything is really crisp, is beautifully moulded. You've only got sink marks on the underside where you're just not going to see anything. So that's looking very nice. We'll go into detail as the parts are called in the instructions. Parts G and H are basically the lower hull. There's not much there, but what there is quite nice. There's some you know, rivet detail there. Obviously we're going to add parts on. Nothing at all to speak of there. We're not going to see an interior on this. The deck is devoid of any kind of detail. It's just a flat thing, except for, you know, the odd little bit of sort of riveting here and there. But we're going to put hatches, we're going to put things on, and our torpedoes are going to sit from there to there. More about that later, putting torpedoes on this. Sides are, you know, incredibly boring. I mean, you put this thing together and it is just a slabby box. That's where a nice camo scheme is really going to come in handy. More about that later. Now, some things in bags. DS tracks, and we've got quite a lot of odds and ends here. And this, which curiously are some very fine parts, which I won't take out of the bag. There's a couple of hands there, and some other pieces, which again, we'll look at the instructions shortly and find out what that's about. Oh no, that's a camera. That's basically for, yeah, the figure. You can set him up as a photographer. So there you go. Whether I'll use that or not, I doubt it. But a handy little thing to have in the spare, so I'll just keep that loose. Now the DS tracks, well, I'm just not a fan of DS tracks. They're horrible. They'll break after a few years. I thought I'd open this packet. Look, I won't even bother taking them out. They are nicely moulded. They will look quite good on the kit. You know, you're not exactly going to get any sag at them. That's always sort of tricky because basically they're just sort of a vinyl. You have to cut a section out of them, but you use 2 on each side, but 2 minus, I think it's 20 mils or something. We'll have a look. And that's going to be a problem because then once they're cut, you don't have the advantage of the joining mechanism. So we'll have to look at that. That's a bit of a pest. That's a bit of a problem. So yeah, these are annoying. And Dragon, we would rather have indie links every day of the week. Whatever happened to Magic Tracks? Let me open this and we'll have a look at this bag and its contents in more detail. You get this nice big long piece of wire here, and that's for a little pulley arrangement. I'll explain that as we go into the instructions later. So that's fun. You get PE, which is, well, I can understand the need for this grill which goes over the muffler. That's nice. That's nice to have. And then you've got all of these. There's a shipload of them. Yes. We'll discuss those shortly as we go into the wheels, because quite frankly, I think they're pretty well unnecessary, but we'll talk with them. You also get these nice decals here. That's nice, but there's no call for it at all in the kit, at least not in this one, but it will be very useful for the version that I'm going to make. The instructions start with the building the wheels. It's pretty typical for Dragon. That's what they do. And you're going to have 4 bogies per side, so 8 bogies. Each bogie has got 4 wheels. So you've got 32 wheels to contend with. And they are nicely moulded. We have a look at those now. There. You can see that's the backside, or as we would call it, the arse end of things. And there's the front of them. They're nicely moulded. And the detail is quite exquisite and tiny and fine. Which begs the question then, why, oh why, Dragon, do we need 32 tiny little PE pieces, which are like little gaskets, when they could be moulded on the wheels? And what I'm on about here is, in the instructions, you've got your 2 wheels, and you've got your bogies, right, and 2 wheels there, and then you've got these little photo etch gaskets. And they're going to sit on top of, basically, your wheel here, right? So they're going to sit on top of that. And tiny little things. And then the bogie, right, will sit over it. So let's have a quick see. The bogie is going to go, well, you're going to see a lot of that, aren't you? Yes, that's really going to work, Dragon. So by the time that goes on, but anyhow, that doesn't matter. This tiny bit of detail, like it's a little sort of flower shape or cog shape, why couldn't have that been moulded onto the wheel? You've done all this other work that is just gorgeous, okay? You have moulded everything on so nicely, and you couldn't just do that extra little bit? I don't know. Maybe it is beyond the moulding process. Or is it just the case of, we're going to charge a lot of money for this kit? Yeah, on eSprue, we've got these things here, which is part of this whole arrangement. And I know, well, on my schlepper, that was part of a pulley system. So that would have made more sense, but I don't think it is here. They're obviously hatches, and that's a cover. So whether you have to put that part on, who knows? Because each of these things is a ring, which comes from the previous sprue. There's a lovely little slide moulded, I think. It looks like a slide mold. Yeah, it's beautifully moulded. These rings here, which are obviously gorgeous. And on top of those are these hatches. And then on top of that, all that loveliness gets covered up by this. So I wonder if there's a way to pop that open. We'll do some research and see if that's absolutely necessary. It may be part of the hermetically sealed system. Because as I said, this thing basically was designed to submerge with a submarine, sitting on top of a submarine's deck and submerge. So maybe that's what that was all about. So you might be able to leave that off and then have all that lovely detail showing. Wouldn't that be nice? Now, an interesting thing we start here, which is also back on D-sprue. This is the props, screws, right? And you've also got these arms. Okay, well, is there a sub-assembly for those? No, that's part E10, so that should be basically, well, that's, we're flipping around a bit here, isn't it? It's a bit annoying, isn't it? So those are the arms, E14, yep, E14, E10. And what's going on there that's of interest, right, is this business with the screws on rotates up and down. So basically when it's up on the land, very similar to other amphibious things like the Schwimmwagen, they used to drop its prop down and lock in position when it was in the water, but the prop would lift up, out, and so that it was not in the way, it couldn't get fouled on the land. And there's a similar mechanism here, where the whole business at the back here will lift up. So we'll see that in the next step. And we might move on to that now. So here in steps 2 and 3, there's the whole prop assembly. And as I said, it fits in there and it's not to be glued in place. It just basically clicks in there so that it can pivot up and down. Oh, that's rather clever. We've got a few little bits and pieces to go on to start making the lower hole look a bit more interesting. But let's face it, that's going to have its arse end down to the bloody, your bench top or your display cabinet floor. So you're not going to see much of it anyway. But it is nice to have the props and the assembly there. The track links, the DS, are going to go on here, and this is where they mention take 20 off. I assume that's 20 millimeters. It's just under an inch. You've got to remove, which is a bloody pest because joining these DS tracks can be troublesome the best of time. Normally you use their little holes and little studs in them, and they kind of click together, like so, and you then put a hot screwdriver on to basically melt it and lock it in place, because no matter what kind of glue you try and use on these, it's not very successful. So how we are then to accomplish removing 20 millimeters and then somehow reassembling all this so it works, don't know. We'll see how that happens. We'll cross that bridge when I build this and see how we go. I really want to replace these with Indy-Links, but at the moment there's no way I'm paying out the money for a set. They're too expensive. Okay, so moving along from that, step 4, not much. We just put in a couple of covers here to cover up the props. Quite often with Dragon kits, I will often find that there's something they say put on now that'll be a real problem later on and get in the way. So I make little notes, don't do that till stage 8. So we'll see. As I build this kit, I will give you the notes and what to do. For instance, although I would probably make the wheels up and I would test fit them, I'm not going to put my DS tracks on now. They need to be painted separately and they're a different colour to the body. So things like that, although they always want you to put the wheels and the tracks on early, no, I'll leave them right to the end. And there's that's so I can paint them. So I can paint them individually. Okay, moving along. Step 5 is putting on that wire, right? So that's that wire cable. It runs all the way through here. So there's some sort of, so that's a pulley arrangement. For what, I don't know. Maybe it's for pulling up the screws, the props, and the rudder thing. Maybe that's what it's all about. So there's a nice bit of detail there where it goes through and it links in. So that's all quite nice. But that's already moulded on, so there's really not much they add there. Believe it or not, we're into step 8 and we're nearly finished. So step 8 is where this assembly goes on, and we built that before with that cover. And I think those vents would look so much nicer, because they've got to be air vents. I think they're going to look so much nicer if they're exposed. So I'm going to look into seeing if that's doable. We've got all the other little hatches. They're good. I usually like to pose my hatches a little bit open because I try and have my vehicles in operation or unloading, loading, unloading sort of, so they look interesting. And I'll try and see if at least I can sort of have those not completely fat, but open a bit. I might have to put some detail inside to make that interesting. Cabin at the front goes on. That's good. Now this is where, if you're doing the version with the Torpedoes, you would need to add machine guns either side here. And that's what I intend to do. I'll scratch some little cones there and an assembly to put the machine guns in. So a bit of a pick here of what Dragon is going to do with the upgrade of this kit, and I think I can make that. They have that as optional, but basically if you leave that off, there's not much left, is there? So, unless when it was submerged, they took that part off, and that probably would be true because it's wide open at the back. That's the little part that came loose. Right, that's this one that came loose, and the whole inside of that has got the steering wheel for the boat mechanism and all the rest of it, and the controls. So yeah, maybe they had this below decks in the submarine, and then they brought that out and put it on top. So if you were doing it as it was on the submarine, you wouldn't have that, and you'd have that covered up. I'd say once it's operational, that goes in. I'm guessing all this, I'm surmising it, but I'd say that can come off because basically your vents can be exposed. And what's the point of having all that nice detail, Dragon? You can't see it. Now, the next part from Dragon is incredibly disappointing. Paint scheme. Sorry, fell asleep. Yeah, it's like their box art. That's pretty boring, Dragon, because there are some other kits like the one by Rich Models, and they do this camo. Now that's more fun for a modeler. Most of us anyway, we love a camo scheme. I do. I love a camo scheme. I like colours. I like things, a plain green tank bores me to death. there's your figure, and he's got his camera, so that's the only one they talk about. But we've got all the other figures in there, so I don't see why we can't do something with them. I'm assuming he's Japanese. Don't know. We'll look into that later. Unless these are supposedly meant to be American troops who have discovered this thing sitting there inspecting it. Don't know. We'll do some research on that. But I'd like to at least make this look like we have a Japanese sailor, soldier, don't know, something, a commander on the Ka-Tsu. All right, well, that's the instructions, and we've pretty well been through the parts, so I don't think there's much more to say. So that's the Ka-Tsu. Yes, it's big box. Big box with a lot of hot air. Yes, as we discovered. Goodness me, Dragon. Over 60% air. Anyhow, apparently they fixed that with the next release. The much anticipated version that does have the torpedoes and the machine guns. Yes, they've put it in the smaller box. So you bloody should, Dragon, you rip-off bastards. Anyhow, I'm just lucky I bought the kit at the right price. I mean, I'd be pretty disappointed if I'd paid that full 13 shekels and then opened the box up and gone, for frick's sake, what's all this air? So, things I don't like about the kit, well, DS tracks, they suck. The only solution there is to buy yourself some Indie links, and you're going to need 2 sets. Yeah, because I think so got so much linkage that there is I think it's a Ka-Me, which is another Japanese tank, and one they actually put pontoons on, and it was almost a schleppery type thing, really just an amphibious tank, but yeah, that's fascinating too. I might try and get hold of one of those one day. But yeah, if you want to do the Indie Link route, then you're up for 2 sets, and when I priced them, they were 5 shekels each for a set, so 10 more shekels for Indie Links. No, I don't think so. We'll put the DS tracks on, and then in about a year or 2 when they go brittle, snap and fall off, well, I'll save all my pennies and I'll put some Indie Links on it. Now, yes, the Dragon kit is much anticipated, and it will have the torpedoes and the machine guns. Now, the machine guns, it's not going to be that hard a job to scratch, really, in that I can make the little pedestals they sit on. They're just simple cones. And Shapeways actually produce the 30mm Japanese machine gun. So I get a couple of those, about a shekel each. You know, I'm prepared to pay that for a nice detailed machine gun because we're quite prominent there. And I'll probably use one or 2 of the figures in this on the Ka-Tsu because I think that'll give it some interest. The torpedoes, now I think I can scratch those. I really do. They're basically tubes. There's a little bit of cylinder and anything. I might cheat and make some of it out of paper, which might be easier to form, especially to get my cones. And then, you know, I'm sure I can make up some cylinders with tapered ends. I mean, I started doing something like that for the Bowfighter. Yes, had a brain fart there. It's Sunday morning here. Goodness me, haven't even woken up yet. I need a coffee. Yeah, so should be able to scratch those. The brackets that mount the torpedoes, I found some CAD drawings, and I've got some expanded drawings from, well, the CAD drawings from Dragon that I found online, which show in detail exactly how those brackets are done. So I'm pretty confident I should be able to just make those out of some stock styrene. So that there's some railings at the stern. They're not hard to make. I've got some wire I can make those. So basically, as far as I can tell, the only difference are these few things to produce the version that I want. And then I'm also going to go that very funky camo scheme. Thank you to Rich Models, who produced this in 1/72. My friend Bernard's getting that. And there's a Rich Model. That's a really nice camo scheme on that one. 4 colours. 4-colour Japanese camo scheme. So with that camo scheme to break up, because it's pretty slab-sided, this thing, and the torpedoes and a few other bits and pieces, it's going to look a lot more interesting. And I'm pretty excited about doing this. So I think that'll be something I'll do in the early new year. I do have the other Schlepper 2 to make, but I think I'll get onto this one as soon as I can. So there you go. What do you think? Interesting, isn't it? Ka-Tsu. We'll call it a sushi schlepper. Try saying that too many times without your false teeth in. All right, well, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.